Good morning, Joe Wenberg, Bluebird Semaphore. It's May 29th, 2024. And today I'm going to do some discussion in the tradition of world history for ordinary people, which you've seen. Maybe if you've watched any Bluebird, you may have seen other world history talks I gave over the last 4 or so years. Be that as it may, one of the concepts that and kind of like a rule that I'd set out for myself years ago when I started reading history in a less than casual way. I was reading it with a little bit of seriousness, with a little bit of an idea to accomplish something, to not just read and read and read. So, I would know when William the Conqueror did his conquering in Hastings. Those type of things were never really that important. What was more important to me back then was that I would, after looking into subjects, many, no ideas on these subjects would start popping in my head. And I would think on them and I would try to make them into some coherent explanation, some coherent idea of what I was reading about and what the world has been reading about and talking about in the guise of history for centuries, millennium. Be that as it may, and I continued to do that while I was recording Bluebird. Sometimes I recorded a session with no new idea to speak of, but I did it, and I've been thinking on some aspects of world history now for quite some time, and you know this. I've been thinking about things Far East, and it caused me all this reading and the explanation about what was going on in the Far East to visualize much of the world as acting in the same fashion as they were acting over there in the Far East, and for essentially all the same reasons. And so the last thing I'm reading that made these ideas crystallize was a book by Paul M. Clyde, Clyde, called The Far East. And even though there's so much to cover there, he's pretty much covering the 19th century and the early part of the 20th century, the first half. A little bit of the 18th century also. And there is a tremendous amount of activity over there at the edge of Asia at that time. And yet the book itself is about 600 pages, maybe 700. So you would think, well, how do you get all that into one book? But this guy, Paul Clyde, manages to do a very good job, in my opinion. And he's got it like almost as if it was he was jotting down notes for a very long journal. Well identified each area, and then you'll go through a couple of pages, and then you come another title for another area, and just easy to follow, plenty of maps, although I wouldn't say they go overboard on the maps. Very few charts and graphs and all that thing. I mean, the information is in the words he's writing. So what did I come up with that made me feel that, okay, it's time for another talk on world history, because it's not just cataloging ideas of an author, which I try to avoid, but the new idea popped into my head that in general, we have one condition in the world, all over the world. There's one condition. And the world is in a constant state of war. But the people who control the world see an advantage. I guess they do, they must. But they see some sort of advantage in breaking it down into war and peace. And I don't mean to steal that from Tolstoy either. But that's the way they want to present it to the we people. We're at war, now we're not at war. We're at war, now we're not at war. Well, I'm seeing it different. And this book really slammed it home. We are in a constant state of warfare. There are times between battles when the activity diminishes and the powers to be have instructed the historians to call those peace times, when in fact what they are preparation times or backfilling times, either preparation for the next war or backfilling from the disasters of a war that just ended. So it can certainly be stated that between these three possibilities, the world is in a continuous state of war. War is our natural state. And we have been so acclimated to thinking in terms of war as just a little segment of civilization, a little segment of history, that we've all bought into it, when in fact what we should be buying into is that we're always at war, and the powers that be are saving up their stockpiles for more war. They back out of one action phase into another. And as I was thinking of this, I said, this is very similar to baseball. Because in baseball, what do you have? You have spring training, then you have the real season, then you have the World Series, the playoffs, then you go into a period of negotiation, buying and selling new players, adding on to your teams, getting ready for the next season of baseball. Well, in that arena, they don't differentiate. It's all baseball. Like the song says, it's all rock and roll to me. It's all baseball. That's what they're doing. When war, bang, 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 it's on the headlines in the New York Times, bang, 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 tanks, airplanes, blah, blah, blah. And then the peace talks, And then blah, blah, blah. Oh, this foreign secretary went over there to talk to that foreign secretary. And things are heating up in the Northwest and the Southeast. And we have turmoil here, and we have this, that, and the other thing. Well, they're just getting their ducks in a row for the next battle, the next war. That's all it is. It's war. So we live in a constant state of war. And listen, I'm saying this, it's my opinion, but I'm not the least knowledgeable person on the planet either. So some validity should be given to this statement. And I don't make bring out these concepts lightly. I've been thinking on war and the tendency of humans to kill each other for a gazillion years. And I back it up with a lot of reading and listening to other people's ideas on war and killing each other. So basically, in a nutshell, it's what I wanted to get on here and talk about was war. Now, I wanted to lead this discussion off with the statement that I broke a cardinal rule and I didn't get up this morning and do the first thing I usually do is practice the piano. And Lord knows I need it. I need it really bad. But I didn't. I said, I want to do this talk. This is now becoming a major theme in my daily thinking. That the peanut butter that gets smeared on the nice thin slice white bread, all healthy for you nowadays, is that it's a metaphor for the peanut butter is a metaphor for war, is spread all over the planet. You won't see any aspect of the past that is not engaged in one aspect of or another of war. So war is the constant. You can't just go to war. You got to build up your money reserves. You got to have men. You have to have weapons. All this takes place in a preparation for war. And then you go out when you got enough ducks in your basket and ducks are all lined up. You go out and you prosecute the war. And then when you've done enough killing for one war, you back down. You call for the hospital ships. You have the ceremonies, all that stuff. You pay off the veterans, and life is said to be back to normal. When in fact, unless you're saying normal is war and the preparation for war, or the deceleration from war, it's always war. Then it's normal. War is normal, and quite frankly, theoretically, why should it be otherwise? I mean, humans are just another animal, They see the chimpanzees waging war on one troop over another. We see lion prides battling each other for territory. We see it in nature. We see it in vegetation. One aspect of vegetation tries to outcompete another branch of vegetation. And usually one wins and steps all over the other one. So why should it be otherwise that humans are warless? It doesn't make any sense. Because everything in the world has as its major task to kill and annihilate any competitor. That's the big deal. That is the deal. You're alive, you're well, but look, there's a competitor. Kill it. Okay? But, you may want to evaluate that competitor first to see if there's any business in it for you. Maybe you can make a kopeck or a ruble on that competitor. And then you get rid of them. So, it's interesting that I was able to bring in the idea of vegetation, because on my little plot of land here, I've designated names for 5 or 6 of the fairly large oak trees that grew native on this property. So I've given them the names. I'm going to sound them off for you. And there's about 5 of them, I think, 6 maybe. I have George Washington. I have General Sherman. I have Patton. I have Tecumseh. I have, I can't think of the other one, but I'm going to say Magua. Now, Magua is the Indian in the Hollywood movie Last of the Mohican. He was the bad guy. Magua was the bad guy. Yeah, I guess he was a Huron. You know, he would do stuff for the Brits, and he was pretty underhanded and sneaky and doing things behind everybody's back. But and I put him in there with the rest of these people. Now, there was one other. I'm trying to think of who it was. Patton, George Washington, General Sherman, Tecumseh. Tecumseh, you know, was the Indian chief, more or less in the Midwest. Try to get his people to beat back the Europeans and reclaim their God-given land, which of course was feudal to so many of the other types, you know. Tecumseh, and he eventually winds up somehow dying in battle, but he was considered a very right-thinking individual. He usually was on the right side of an event, definitely on the right side of trying to get rid of the people who were taking his land and his people's land. And so that was Tecumseh. Now, I should get in the name of a Comanche because, they were, at the end of the day, they were the baddest of the bad. You know, nobody could stand up to them. Not the native people of the Great Plains, the armies of the invading West. Nobody could stand up to the Comanches, so I should get one in there now. It's easy enough. Geronimo, he stayed with his people. They shuffled him off to Florida. His last days were, I would have to use the term pitiful, for a great warrior leader of his people. His latter days were pitiful. But there are other Comanches who could be given individual acknowledgement as well. But this is not a discussion about Native Indians. I just wanted to bring in the fact that I've given names to certain oak trees on this property. And so when I'm out there, I like to think about those people: George Washington, General Sherman, and Patton, along with these Indians, Geronimo, Tecumseh, and Magua. One of my favorite movies of all time, The Last of the Mohicans. And that movie tricked me big time. I guaranteed anybody who watched it with me that the movie was shot in the Adirondacks. Essentially, the action takes place in the Adirondacks, New York State. And then at the very end, I watched the credits and it says, filmed on location in North Carolina. So I could see that. I could see that being the case. Uh, However, North Carolina's mountains in many places are much higher than the Adirondacks. So this is how things stand. May 29th, 2024. The discussion about the claim that the putty, the jello, the peanut butter that is smeared all over us is war, but the people that are running the show never let that out of the bag. They want everybody to believe the way they tell it. You have war, then you have peace, and everything is wonderful. And then, oh look, things start getting out of the way. We have to start overtaxing you. You build up a war chest. We have to make more ships. We have to induct more men. This is what we gotta do, because we're gonna make another war. You know, we, the people who control you, we're making another war. Well, and we don't want to tell you, it's one big fat war. That's all that's going on. And so when you get a moment, enjoy it, because for all you know, there could be bombs coming the next day. So I'm not trying to try to scare you into believing anything. I don't see war happen on top of the United States anytime soon. But I also can't say with any assurance that it's not a possibility. You know, and particularly as these technologies get more and more out of hand. And there's nothing the guys that are controlling us love better than to introduce new technologies, because they always see it as an improvement or a way of improving on their control of us. So, hey, that's the good news for this morning, folks. And then what else can I tell you? Nothing else. Stay tuned, because I'm sure down the road, after reading and thinking, remember, they go together, reading, thinking, and observing. You know, ideas pop in your head. And this is a good thing, I think, anyway. May not be. I've always said, you know, people always claim, oh, the solution is education. And I say to them, well, wait a minute. All the educated people in the world, you know, are at fault in creating these wars and carving out this culture that is so hideous. You know, the educated people. So why is education the solution to prevent violence and more wars? Education is not the anti-serum for violence on this planet. No, not by a long shot. And not that I can tell you what is, but I have a few ideas. And with that note, I'll I'll encourage you to come up with your own ideas. That's why we were given brains. We weren't given brains to absorb and digest and believe somebody else's outline of history. No, our brains were created to come up with novel ideas and try to make things seem correct. Well, even that, I don't know that, but it seems that we do have a tendency to promote ideas. Problem is, it has to be the right ideas. You know, it's like Albert Schweitzer said about advertising. He didn't have a problem with advertising. He says it's just that the wrong people have enough money to buy advertisement, and they're advertising the wrong stuff. That's Albert Schweitzer. Brilliant man. But nobody bought his idea. Nobody. They chased him out of the the conversation, so to speak, because his idea did not lead to money. And that's the problem here, is that whether it was in the Far East in the 18th, 19th, 20th century, or in North America, when the invasion from Europe over the native people, it was always there behind the scenes convention. These are the invaders. These are the intruders. It was always their somewhat secretive idea that what we want, what we're trying to achieve here, is to get these people to act and believe like us. We want them all to be little Johnny Redcoat. We want all of them to be frogs. Frogs is a word for French people. And I'm not trying to be whatever it is, discourteous. It's used all the time. Go down to Florida. Every other person there is called a frog. So we all come down from their winter hellhole up there in Canada to sit at Clearwater Beach, but not go in the water because it's full cold for them. It's 7 degrees. Up was 70 degrees. I'm not going in there. What a bunch of idiots. Listen, I think I got to go. I'm starting a rant. Have a nice day. It was nice visiting with you since our long absence. I'm clicking on the little red button here. See the way they got us programmed? Hey, even me, I'm programmed. I got to click on the little red button.